The Utah Jazz have gamed the system. After trading away both of their stars in Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, many expected the Jazz to be in a complete rebuild. But currently on the season, the Jazz have an 8-3 record and are the second seed in the Western Conference. And at this point, those who are within the front office of the Utah Jazz look like absolute geniuses. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. The Utah Jazz have been a very dangerous team for a decent amount of time. Led by Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert at the top, the Jazz also had a good amount of depth around those main two players. And each and every season, the Jazz consistently made the playoffs. And not only were they making the playoffs, they were always a top 5 seed in the Western Conference. And they were always going to be a difficult matchup for any team in the NBA, no matter how many superstars that opposing team had. But unfortunately for the Jazz, a recurring theme started to mount after a couple seasons passed. And that reoccurring theme was the Jazz during the regular season were always a very good team, as I said, a top 5 seed, most of the time even higher than that. But once the playoffs came around, the Jazz certainly did struggle. And they were consistently losing either in the first or second round season after season until eventually superstar Donovan Mitchell became frustrated with the situation in Utah. And at the time of the trade request, in my personal opinion, I did think it made a lot of sense to move on from Donovan for both sides. And the reason why I say this is, in my opinion at least, it was pretty clear that the Jazz, as currently constructed, weren't going to win an NBA championship. They consistently failed to make it that far into the playoffs season after season. So in my opinion, I thought it probably was a time for change, but from Donovan's perspective, it also made a ton of sense as well, because they weren't winning, of course. So he wanted to win, the Jazz weren't winning with him with the current roster they had. So in my opinion, it made sense for both of these sides to split. And when the Jazz were able to move on from their other star, Rudy Gobert, and were able to get so much in return for him, at that point I realized they were going to trade Donovan Mitchell for sure, and they were going to go in the direction of a rebuild. And of course they were eventually also able to trade away Donovan Mitchell. And when you look at what they were able to get back for these two stars they had, it's an incredible haul. They were able to get a ton of draft picks, a ton of really nice young players on the roster. They were also able to get some nice players in free agency to complement the other guys that they brought in and already had on the roster. And at this point, when you look at the Utah Jazz, although they don't have superstars, of course, they definitely have a very nice and very talented young team. But going into the season with the roster that they currently have, many people expected them to be an exciting team perhaps, but they certainly did not expect this team to be a playoff team or anything close to it. But as I mentioned before in the video, the Jazz have certainly far surpassed expectations thus far early on to the season, and they currently hold an 8-3 record, which honestly is just incredible considering the level of expectations that they've had going into the season, and considering they just traded away their main two stars. But now the question is, why are the Jazz playing so well? Is it coaching? Is it players? Is it a combination of both? What's going on? Well, in my opinion, it's a combination of both. When you have a young but talented team like the Jazz currently do have, in order for a team like that to get to the level of play that they're currently at, that requires great coaching. And certainly first-year head coach Will Hardy deserves a ton of credit for what he was able to do so far. Of course, it is still extremely early on into the season and anything could happen, but thus far they look great. So clearly there has been great coaching going on in Utah. But even besides the great coaching, there have been a few surprises, and there have been some players that have been playing just very good basketball thus far. And there's two specific players that come to my mind when saying this, and they both come from the same team in the Cleveland Cavaliers. The first player is Lauri Markkanen, who's playing out of his mind. Markkanen was a player very early on into his career. In his first 2 seasons, he showed a ton of promise, averaging 15 points in his rookie year and bumping his numbers up to around 19 in his second season. But for whatever reason after that, his career started to go downhill due to injuries and due to less opportunity he was getting in Chicago. But in my personal opinion, I always thought that he had a ton of talent. So when he moved on to the Utah Jazz and he got a bigger opportunity, he's just playing at a very high level, far surpassing any expectations anybody had for him. On the season, he's averaging averaging almost 22 points per game on almost 52% shooting from the field, 9.4 rebounds on 2.7 assists. Just incredible numbers, all-star level numbers. And he even had two 31-point games on very efficient shooting in both as well. So in my opinion, the play of Lauri Markkanen and the way that he's far surpassed any expectations that anybody had for him has certainly been a huge factor for why the Jazz are playing so well thus far. But the other player that in my opinion is a huge factor for why the Jazz are playing so well has been Collin Sexton. Now when Collin was originally going to the Utah Jazz, it was pretty clear that he was most likely going to be the best player on the team. And thus far, he's certainly been the number one or maybe the number two guy considering how well Markkanen has played thus far. But nonetheless, on the season, Collin is still playing at a very high level of NBA basketball, averaging 14 points per game on 47% shooting from the field, 2.9 rebounds on 1.9 assists. Now, of course, there are certain statistics that you would like to see him improve upon, specifically those assist numbers, but when you actually watch him out there on the court, he definitely looks very good and a player that I am confident in going forward long term. But as I mentioned before, the Jazz aren't a team that are just led by those two players, for example, and led by star guys. They're a team that's been getting a ton of production for a bunch of different players on this roster, which in my opinion makes them a great team, and in my opinion is one of my favorite type of teams to watch. Because at that point, you have to run crisp offensive sets, you have to play good defense. You can't necessarily rely on your superstar players to carry you. And I think thus far early on into the season, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing crisp offensive sets due to great coaching on the roster alongside with good individual play and team play. We're also seeing great individual and great team defense, and overall they're just a very complete team from top to bottom at this point. And in my opinion, those factors that I mentioned are certainly the reason why the Jazz are playing so well thus far. But of course, as I touched upon slightly early on into the video, it is still very early on, and going forward throughout the season, anything could happen. They can completely fall off a cliff and turn into a non-playoff team, or they can continue on the path that they're going on, or they could just fall off slightly and become a top 6 or a top 8 seed in the Western Conference. Now, no matter what happens throughout the regular season and in the playoffs, if they do make it there, I don't necessarily think it matters. What I am expecting and what I am looking for from the Utah Jazz is just to play hard each and every night and play good team basketball. And if they're able to do that, then they're building a foundation in Utah that eventually players would want to come to in the distant future, unless they do get better than expected quicker. And the reason why I say that is because there weren't real expectations going into the year. The Jazz just traded away their main two guys, so you can't expect them to be all that good in their first season. Now, if they are, obviously they would be well ahead of schedule, and so far it looks like they are, which is incredible to watch, but it's not necessarily something you can expect. But I'm certainly a huge fan of what the Jazz were able to do, the fact that they were able to get so many draft picks in return for their main two players, alongside with other nice young guys, and the fact that they're playing so well so far. It's just been incredible to watch. But I guess we'll see what happens going forward for the Utah Jazz. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Utah Jazz gained the system and are going to be a very good team going forward, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.